Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan. I'm the mind behind Make More Capital, and today we're coming at you with a midweek update in the world of cannabis. Now, before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learn something, please just leave a like on it as it really helps out my channel. And of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos, and there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so that you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the industry, identify top companies that you keep seeing pop up, and then take advantage whenever you feel ready if you wish to do so. We're going to start with this news from New Cannabis Ventures. As July cannabis sales in 11 markets increased 4.6% from June to 1.69 billion, which we do love to see because especially after a strong April with 420 sales, we typically see May fall back a little bit, then a bit of a jump into June, and then as I had said in a video in the past, we were expecting July sales to at least ramp back up close to April numbers, and that is the trend that we did see. And especially in adult use markets, as obviously medical only markets have a much harder time seeing that organic growth month over month since they can only sell to medical patients. But the main thing to highlight is that 3 times in a year we typically see big spikes in sales, and that's usually March and April. And then in March and April, we anticipated a bit of a lull into July, and so just happy to share with you that July we did see that spike back up. And then of course we'll see how from now until the end of the year plays out. If it's not Croptober, hopefully we'll see more legal sales, which will be positive. And then in December, we're going to anticipate another big spike as people stock up for the holidays. But let's run through this. Eastern markets. BDSA provides coverage for Florida, Illinois, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. In July, year-over-year growth ranged from negative 13.5 in PA, medical-only market, to 27.2 in Florida, also a medical-only market. So again, all markets are different. Got to appreciate the differences. Note that Florida, Maryland, and Pennsylvania are medical-only markets. And so I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I'm just going to leave it here so you can pause to read. So we'll start with Florida. You can pause to read about their sales and their progress if you want to look through. Then Illinois, you can pause to read. Maryland, you can also pause to read as well. Massachusetts, you can pause to read. And then Michigan, you can pause to read as well. And I think there's one more. Pennsylvania, yes, of course. Pennsylvania, you can pause to read also. And so that's it for the Eastern markets. While Western markets, BDSA provides coverage for Arizona, California, Colorado, Nevada, and Oregon. In July, year-over-year growth ranged from negative 23.1% in Colorado to negative 10% in California compared to a year ago. And so obviously the mature markets are having a harder time keeping up, especially with Croptober and all the illicit competition. But I still have faith in these MSOs and that this plant will win in the end. So Arizona, you can pause to read for more information there. Of course, you can always grab the full link below if you just wanted to check out this article. California, you can pause to read for more information on that market. Colorado, you can pause to read. Nevada, you can pause to read. Good to see Nevada finally picking back up after a very long lull period for them. And then lastly, Oregon as well, you can pause to read. And so thank Alan Brockstein, CFA, for providing all this info for us from BDSA. So just happy to share that sales are heading up in the right direction through summertime as people are enjoying themselves and buying more legal cannabis. And with that, some news out of Arkansas as medical cannabis patients spent over $23 million in August. So happy to share progress out of a smaller state, medical only like Arkansas. As medical cannabis patients spent $23.27 million across Arkansas's 38 dispensaries in the month of August. According to a release from the Arkansas Department of Finance and Administration, last month's sales totaled 4,245 pounds of product, and the Natural Relief Dispensary in Sherwood had the most sales for the month with 423 pounds sold. The Relief Center in Bentonville was second at 281 pounds, as August was the largest month for pounds sold in 2022 as patients purchased more than 4,245 pounds of medical cannabis. Seems like another record in Arkansas, said Scott Harden, spokesperson for the Arkansas Department of Finance and Administration. And since January 1st, 2022, patients have spent $181 million to obtain 32,000 plus pounds. Harden added, with $2.7 million in state tax revenue collected from medical cannabis in August, a total of $78.68 million has been collected since the industry launched in mid-2019. So obviously, Arkansas is very happy they reformed these medical cannabis laws, and they're now serving 89,983 patients. Still such a small number, but so much more room for growth as more and more people from Arkansas and across the U.S. get access to a safer, non-addictive medicinal alternative. And so with that, while I don't think anyone was expecting much to come out of this, the Biden administration did not disappoint because, of course, nothing did. As Tom Angle reported on September 5th, breaking, President Joe Biden discussed cannabis with PA Democratic Senate candidate John Fetterman when they met at a Labor Day event. Of course, that's a nice headline, but unfortunately, no propagandist at today's White House press briefing asked about the Biden administration's take on the president's cannabis chat with Fetterman yesterday. And I say propagandist because you can't call yourself a reporter or journalist if you do not have the courage to ask the difficult questions that would hold the current administration accountable, because that is your job as a reporter or a journalist to try and do that. And so very little came out of this, as we were expecting, despite Tom Engel reporting, as well as a new poll from Independent Community Bankers of America finds that 65% of U.S. voters support allowing cannabis businesses to access banks. And again, very few things most Americans can agree on, but cannabis seems to be the one thing. The president wants to ignore that, that's fine, but it's going to come at a cost to him, I think, at some point in time. As 71% say it'll reduce the risk of robberies, 100%, as we know SAFE could have been implemented a year and a half ago and it would have saved many lives, but Schmuck Schumer chooses to work for Big Pharma as opposed to the American people, so the robberies continue. And 55% believe the cannabis reform will aid underserved communities, 100%. So just more information on the summary here, but I'll put the link below of the whole poll if you wanted to reach more, or if you wanted to read more from that Marijuana Moment article. And on top of that, I just want to share this because the robberies continue because the members of Congress that Americans elected do not work for the American people, and they choose to work for multinational interests like big pharma companies. And so thank you, Joe Greisler, for just bringing this to our attention again and sharing the reality that when you don't solve the problem continues. Police worry that pot shop burglars in St. Louis Metro will become violent. Spokeswoman Evita Caldwell said 10 dispensaries in the city were burglarized between June 27th and August 29th, which is absolutely ridiculous. This on top of everything that's happening on the West Coast in those more mature markets as well. And I believe there was a story yesterday, I don't know if this is the same one, but someone got attacked, I think it was in Missouri, with an axe, and then the person that attacked with the axe obviously got shot and was killed for attacking the security guard, I believe, with an axe. Now, insane, but that wouldn't be happening for the most part if SAFE had been passed, because you don't have cash in these dispensaries, and you don't have mentally unstable people trying to take advantage of situations or attacking anyone with an axe, because I don't know why they'd be doing that in the first place. But regardless, past SAFE banking, a lot of these issues go away because you don't have all of this cash in dispensaries and they aren't targets for robbery. So with that, some state news. Tom Engel reports Missouri Governor Mike Parson won't add cannabis legalization to next week's special session agenda, despite a push from activists and lawmakers who want to give the legislature a chance to pass an alternative to a cannabis initiative on the November ballot. So very unfortunate, but I don't believe that all efforts in Missouri are out of the water yet, because while I am sharing this, this is from September 1st, so I think it's a bit old, but I don't have any development on this. So I will come with one once we get it, but Missouri's court could decide on cannabis legalization ballot measures fate next week as lawsuit gets underway. And so this lawsuit, I believe, is completely separate from the governor just making the statement. And so, again, I will try to get more information and follow this as we go, but this is really all I have out of Missouri right now. And this is one of the states that is expected to have a ballot initiative, and obviously the prohibitionists are taking them to court and trying to stop that, but let's hope that the good will win out in the end. And so with that, some news out of Minnesota as well. So thanks, Tom Engel, for sharing this one. A new poll conducted by the Minnesota House of Representatives at the state fair finds that respondents support legalizing cannabis by a 2-to-1 margin. So again, 66% agree with legalization. For adult use, this would be in Minnesota because they've already legalized for medical, where that would leave 33% for keeping prohibition intact. And so obviously very popular to end cannabis prohibition, because obviously they're likely seeing the benefits of ending the medical cannabis prohibition. Why not allow recreational, treat it like tobacco, treat it like alcohol, and bring in the jobs, the tax revenue, and all those benefits. And so on top of that, good news just to highlight that Minnesota voters should decide on cannabis legalization at the ballot. This comes from the GOP governor nominee. So this really doesn't mean much, although, of course, it's more promising to hear from a GOP governor nominee as opposed to a Democratic one. But I don't think this really means a whole lot yet, and it would be great to see some effort from now until November to get this on the ballot in Minnesota. And there's been word that they might try and do that, but just wanted to share that the Republican gubernatorial nominee wants cannabis legalization to be decided by voters on the ballot. So I will update you if this turns into something as well from now until November, but as of right now, I don't believe Minnesota will have any sort of initiative on the ballot, but regardless, good to see them, or more people in positions of power in that state, being open to eventually legalizing for adult use. And so with that, some snippets from investment firms, so take these with a grain of salt, but definitely good sources of information to read through if you want to weigh what you already know. And so it's very similar to what Alan Brockstein does with New Cannabis Ventures, but you want to think of it as just Alan is working by himself, running this own website, and that's, he's using BDSA data to run that, while at the same time, a lot of these investment firms use the same data from BDSA and these other firms to write out there. So just don't take them at face value, take them with a grain of salt, but just more information that you can read through to help you make better investment decisions down the line. So thank you, Dennis Ruda, for sharing this one. Weekly rehash by Roth. Busy news flow around Fed legislation of SAFE Plus. CAOA lays the groundwork for SAFE. Prospects of safe banking accelerate ahead of midterms. with all the positive noise on Safe and Safe Plus, the odds of getting it passed are higher than ever. And while this is true, especially because it's good policy and it's the right thing to do, the sad reality is that Schmuck Schumer, since he's gotten voted in until now, has not worked for the will of the American people. And so the odds that from now until November, he's going to go against his donors and do something like passing Safe Plus, the chances are slim, but I'm still in the camp that believes that the momentum and the lobbying power for safe banking is catching up to the lobbying efforts against safe banking. And with all the positive developments and states just reforming their laws and the obvious benefits of ending cannabis prohibition, it's hard to withhold these floodgates much longer. But all that being said, plan accordingly for your own situation and, expect it to not happen, but also expect to be pleasantly surprised. That's sort of the approach I'm taking. Again, this is not advice, just trying to share as much context with you as possible. With that, this is from Roth Capital. Weekly rehash, fall marks busy news flow around federal legislation Safe Plus, and so you can pause to read more here. And also, they do a good job of bringing together a lot of different factors positive for cannabis happening not only just in the U.S. and around the globe as well as U.S. legislative news, U.S. consumer trends, global developments, and then company highlights. So you can pause to read for more info there. So we go through the weekly rehash. This is from September 2nd. CAOA laying the groundwork for SAFE or some sort of SAFE Plus, accelerating SAFE prospects ahead of midterm elections. And so obviously a lot of talk here, but a lot of good information to take in and consider. So you can pause to read. Well, this one, positive federal momentum expected, as we've sort of been saying that. They've been laying the groundwork for a Safe Plus alternative incremental reform because CAOA was always going to be dead on arrival. And so all we can really do is possibly place our bets in hopes that something will happen. But again, plan accordingly for your own situation is the best advice I can really give. And with that, we've got this one from AGP on U.S. cannabis. So thanks, Todd, for sharing this one. Essentially, AGP sharing the same data that Alan Brockstein was sharing with New Cannabis Ventures that he got from BDSA data update from July 2022 as well. So sales by market, state by state. We've essentially gone through this at all, but this is just a different way of taking in the same information that we got from this first article here. And so you can pause to read, or you can grab the link below, as this comes from September 6, 2022 from Alliance Global Partners. Well, we've got this one from Jeffries on U.S. cannabis. So thanks, Todd, for sharing this one. Calls for decriminalization. So it seems like this is a bit of older news, highlighting the whole John Fetterman meeting with Joe Biden. And of course, this really didn't mean much. But this is just here if you wanted to read what else was included in this one from Jeffries on U.S. cannabis. Well, we've got this last one, or last few ones, Beacon on Florida cannabis. So thanks, Todd, for sharing this one. This is an update from Beacon as of September 6th on the Florida cannabis market. So I'm not going to go through it all, but just going to read the highlight. The Sunshine State update, Verano and Cresco Labs expand retail bases. TIUM delivers strong Q2. And so you can pause to read for more info on the Florida market. Just wanted to share this as another eye-opener and just a reminder of what's coming in 2024 when Florida does legalize for adult use. Pending the success of their 2024 ballot initiative, of course. But with that said, just wanted to thank Justin and a bunch of numbers for again highlighting the success of Florida's medical program already and what this will just mean when adult use comes finally into the state. So Florida has 745,000 patients enrolled in its medical program as of August 26, 2022, per the Florida OMMU, while Florida has a population of about 21.5 million. So that represents such a small percentage of the population already. Florida market ranks 4th in the nation's total legal sales with over 1.8 billion in medical cannabis revenue in 2021, and this is behind states with legal adult use markets like California, Colorado. I don't know what number 3 is, so let me know in the comments if you can fill that in. While the Florida legal market is expected to generate 3.4 billion per year by 2026, with this medical growth alone, from my understanding. Now, I could be wrong in saying that, but I believe that that is medical only, not even considering adult use coming in, potentially getting on the ballot in 2024 and launching before 2026. And so if you know different, let me know in the comments. But pretty impressive just to highlight the growth that even their medical market is going to see from now until 2026. Add adult use, that is going to be explosive. And so with that, just wanted to share this last one from Todd Harrison. Beacon on Massachusetts. So thank you, Todd, for sharing this one. And this is as of September 6, 2022. So you can pause to read. And while Massachusetts has had an adult use program launched for quite some time now, unfortunately, the growth is slowing. And the only thing I can really attribute that is to the obsessive social equity focus that we see out of states on the East Coast, much like New York. Because Massachusetts could have a lot more growth, I think, if they allowed the industry to flourish from the ground up, give out licenses to all business owners with experience that want to take on this challenge, and allow the survival of the fittest to play out while providing jobs and tax revenue, as opposed to trying to control it from the top, making it fair for everybody, and really just, strangling the industry as people try to compete and make profits, but it's very tight when, there's just so much control and regulations. And so that's my 2 cents. What do you think in the comments? Let me know about the Massachusetts market. But with that, on to some MSOs, as Cresco Labs closes sale and leaseback with Aventine Property Group for Brookville, PA facilities. Yesterday, yesterday, Cresco announced that it has completed and closed on an agreement to sell its Brookville, PA property to Aventine Property Group for total additional non-dilutive funding of $45 million. So it seems like they will keep the dispensary operating as a Cresco subsidiary. However, the building ownership has now been transferred to someone else, and Cresco receives $45 million, and no shares, I believe, are diluted in this deal. So the Brookville, PA property includes approximately 135,000 square feet of existing cultivation, manufacturing, and production capacity. This sale marks Cresco Labs' first sale-leaseback transaction with Aventine. And so concurrent with the closing of the sale, Cresco Yeltra LLC, a subsidiary of Cresco Labs, entered into a long-term triple net lease agreement with Aventine regarding the property, and Cresco Yeltra will continue to operate the facility as the permitted cannabis cultivation and processing facility as it has since 2017. So again, while the ownership changes, I believe who's going to be using the facility, which is a subsidiary of Cresco, is still going to be cultivating Cresco flower and shipping Cresco branded products, from my understanding. If you know different, let me know in the comments. But that is essentially what I'm getting out of this. So just wanted to share that. Happy to see Cresco making moves that allow them to get more cash on hand without diluting existing shareholders. While Verano announces that they've completed the acquisition of Sierra Well, bolstering the Nevada footprint with the addition of 2 operating dispensaries and an active cultivation facility. And so this comes as of earlier today, I believe, that Verano, leading multi-state company, today announced the closing of its transaction to acquire all of the equity interest of WSCC Inc., DBA Sierra Well, adding 2 operational dispensaries and an active cultivation and production facility in Nevada, along with 2 real estate properties in Carson City and Reno. And so while this is in Nevada, one of the more struggling Western markets, clearly, I guess Verano sees more room for growth and more potential opportunity there, hence why they'd be expanding. While the acquisition, which was previously announced on July 26, 2021, increases Verano's vertically integrated Nevada operations to 5 active dispensaries and 2 cultivation and production facilities that are geographically spread across the state's key population and tourist regions. So clearly, they see a benefit to taking advantage of this. And so just to run through the transaction details, with the consummation of the transaction, Sierra Well is now a wholly owned subsidiary of Verano. The transaction includes in 2 medical cannabis cultivation licenses, 2 adult use cultivation licenses, 2 medical cannabis dispensary licenses, 2 adult use dispensary licenses, 1 medical production license, 1 adult use product manufacturing license, and 1 adult use distribution license. So they get all that on top of 2 real estate properties in Carson City and Reno. So a lot involved in this deal, and while it does not include how much they paid for all of this, that is mentioned in this press release. So just wanted to highlight that upon consummation of the transaction, Sierra Well will become a wholly owned subsidiary. The purchase price was $29 million, subject to adjustments pending certain obligations being met, I imagine, by the subsidiary. But essentially they got all that for $29 million. So pretty good deal. And so this more summarizes that entire thing if you just wanted to pause to read about Verano here. And then lastly, we got some news out of TLRY, as TLRY initiates roundtable with German regulators to kick off draft legislation to legalize adult use cannabis in Germany. And so again, this doesn't mean much yet, but more small incremental steps in the right direction, as Germany is going to make this a reality and hopefully finish this legislation by the end of this year. As TLRY today announced, and this was yesterday, that the company has initiated a policy roundtable with German regulators on adult use cannabis legalization in Germany. In this meeting, the German Drug Commissioner Burkhard Bleinert presented the plan for adult use cannabis legalization and repeated the German government's announcement that a first draft of the bill would be presented in the coming months. With this event, TLRY reaffirms its leading role as a trusted partner to government regulators and contributes to German legalization efforts by sharing its long-standing expertise and experience in cannabis research, product quality and safety, supply management, patient and consumer protection, and cannabis education. So obviously this sounds beneficial, as TLRY is going to have a leading edge in Germany, as they're the ones helping the regulators draft the legislation and helping with the overall adult use push. And so participants in the meeting included key leaders from Germany's health and legal committees, including their Commissioner of Narcotics Drugs at the Federal Ministry of Health, member of the Bundestag Drug Policy Spokesperson Christine Lütke, member of the Bundestag Committee on Finance Carlos Kasper, and then member of the Bundestag Committee on Health Martina Stam-Fibic. And so just going to read that for now, but again, highlighting TLRY is making it happen, getting all the German lawmakers together and helping piece together what will eventually be adult use legalization and the first domino to fall in Europe. And so, but I see this as huge news for TLRY, as it shows that they are a trusted partner of the German government, who are the ones that's going to make this a reality. And so if they can work with TLRY, massive ups on TLRY to have that exposure in Germany. And while they're a Canadian LP and they're not run nearly as well as a lot of the US MSOs, even Curaleaf, that has also exposure in Germany, TLRY has the benefit of being listed on a major US exchange. And so while I do recommend staying away from LPs, TLRY is the one Canadian LP that I still have exposure to besides all the MSOs, mostly because of the German play. And so again, big development for them in Germany. as things are slowly but steadily moving along. And so with that, just some news stories from mainstream media outlets that I wanted to share, as Puff Daddy highlighted this one. Great finding, nearly 43% of young adults use cannabis in 2021, says the Washington Post. And so nearly 43% of 19 to 30-year-olds say they use cannabis in 2021, according to federally funded research, highlighting that cannabis is only increasing in popularity, especially among the youth and younger individuals who, as we grow older through time, will replace likely the older habits of over-consuming alcohol. I'm not going to say that's going to happen overnight, but clearly shows that cannabis is a lot more popular among youth than alcohol likely is. And so with that, we've got this one from Politico, why weed companies can't make any money. I've highlighted this over and over in my videos, likely due to, not likely, but we can blame it on high taxes, siloed state markets, tight and awfully unproductive, incompetent regulators, and lack of access to capital make it very difficult to turn a profit. So I'm not going to go through this, but invite you to read through it if you wanted to read what Politico has to say and see how different it is from a lot of the stuff that I've touched on over the last little while. But not to say that money can't be made, it's just these companies have both hands tied behind their backs and while getting robbed left, right, and center. Do you think it's the largest MSOs that are suffering from these robberies, or do you think it's small business owners and minority entrepreneurs that can't afford to be robbed because that's all their profits? And so while the best, easiest solution is descheduling cannabis from the CSA, because then it's no longer federally illegal, you end federal prohibition, and companies are no longer paying the 280E tax, all these companies will be profitable overnight like that. But the sad reality is that the government loves control too much to give the plant back to us outright, because they know that it would eat up a lot of market share from big multinational corporations that pay the governments to keep the status quo alive. And so all we can hope for is Safe Plus that will remove that 280E, because 280E is one difference that will make these companies profitable overnight like that. But of course, Safe Bank will be beneficial, getting the cash off the streets, allowing these companies to work with banks, and allowing institutional investors to finally invest by granting them that safe harbor. And so more information if you wanted to read the whole link below. Well, this last one from Jungle Java, why federal legalization of cannabis is finally here. Well, that's a very different tone from what we're seeing in other articles from realclearpolitics.com. So just another article, again, take it with a grain of salt, but I do invite you to read through it, as it's very interesting and a much more bullish look at cannabis versus what we typically see out of mainstream media outlets. Not saying this is a mainstream media outlet, as it's not, realclearpolitics.com, but just to highlight some of the summaries from it. So thank you, Jungle Java, for sharing this. It's time for the legalization of a $60 billion U.S. industry that is fully legal in Canada and headed there in most free economies. The current U.S. industry conditions are so untenable, dangerous, and fundamentally inequitable that zero logical explanations remain for maintaining the status quo. And that's what I've been trying to say for years. Thank you for listening to realclearpolitics.com. Well, 90,000 Americans die every year due to alcohol poisoning, which is a disgusting stat in itself. More disgusting because that is a separate stat from the extra 100,000 Americans that died last year alone from the opioid epidemic. And countless more lives are affected by chronic alcoholism. And you cannot tell me at this point in time that ending federal cannabis prohibition would not have a positive impact in helping decrease the amount that die from alcohol poisoning and opioid overdoses every year. You can't make that argument because the data isn't. To date, there are 0 reported cases of death by cannabis overdose. And according to the latest Pew polling, fully 90% of Americans believe that at least medical cannabis should be legal. And if you add up the Electoral College votes, legal cannabis states beat the rest by a whopping 420 to 96. So just highlighting that where anyone with a sane mind sees where we're at, we're so close, we got to keep fighting. We've got another study just to highlight. Study results show medical cannabis use tied to improved quality of life for patients experiencing neurological and pain-related ailments. So as a cannabis advocacy nonprofit and a leading medical institution, discover positive health impacts of medical cannabis consumption like we've been discovering since the 70s. It's just funny when they present it as if it's new news, but happy to share recent findings indicate that medical cannabis consumption can improve the quality of life for those who could not find reprieve from traditional methods, according to a large online study conducted by Realm of Caring, a cannabis nonprofit advocacy organization, and researchers at the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine. So love to see Johns Hopkins involved, as that's one of the most reputable institutions in medicine. The study's results, published yesterday in Frontiers of Pharmacology, showed that medical cannabis helped mitigate various neurological disorders and pain-related ailments that were impacting participants. So all of this in line with the data that we've seen pile up over the years. Study participants who consume medical cannabis were invited to complete anonymous surveys to provide feedback about their experiences. Of the 808 study respondents, so again, it's a tiny study sample, but again, good findings, 77% reported positive effects, with 28 citing reduced pain, 18% noting improved sleep, and 22 experiencing reduced anxiety. The study participants also described many of the issues they face as medical cannabis patients, such as difficulty in finding adequate providers who know how to dose cannabis, what strains are most helpful to alleviate specific ailments, and which consumption methods work best with their treatment pain, which is why we need so much more education, especially in the medical field around this. And that's hard with Big Pharma having such an impact and influence. But regardless, regarding patient concerns, commonly reported problems included lack of information for medical cannabis support, with 16% of participants citing this concern, as well as 12% reporting prohibited costs as an additional apprehension. And so, unfortunately, they did not put the link of the study, but I'm going to try and find it and just put it in the description below. So hopefully by the time you watch this, I will have found it, and you can grab that if you wanted to look into it more. But obviously great news, as it's more data helping to show that the prohibitionists were wrong all along and that we ought to deschedule sooner than later. And so lastly, we've got these timely words of wisdom from Blue Brigade. So thank you, Blue Brigade, for sharing that one. Oh my God, say that one 5 times fast. Blue Brigade, Blue Brigade, Blue Brigade, Blue Brigade, Blue Brigade. As true today for MSOs as it was for Peter Lynch's day. Invest 2 minutes and listen to this. And so we'll see how what he's saying, how well it applies to the US MSOs. And then with that, I just want to ask you, how early are we still? Like, are we still in the first and second inning? Realistically, when we look at the big picture and all the cycles we're going to go through, as not only the U.S. reforms their laws, but countries around the globe.
Funny, in a stock, all you can lose is 100%. I've done that. But your great mistakes is selling a good company, and then it doubles, then it triples, and it quadruples, because you make a lot of mistakes, and so it's ones that go up tenfold. I call them the 10 baggers. So some of my mistakes just saying, oh my God, this stock is too high, and I was wrong. And you had to figure out, what inning am I in this baseball game? I sold Toys R Us way too early. It went up 20-fold after I sold. I did the same thing at Home Depot. Those are probably my 2 greatest mistakes I ever made.
When should you sell?
Well, you ought to find out why you bought a stock. If you're saying if it's a cyclical company and they're doing poorly and they're doing awful, you wait till things are getting better and they're doing terrific, and then you sell it. But with a growth company, you have to say, Walmart's case, 10 years after they went public, you could have bought the stock and made 500 times your money. You say still are only in 15% of the United States.
You hear that? When Walmart was still only in 15% of the U.S., what percentage of cannabis companies do you think are making up the entire U.S.? Probably room for a lot more. Probably more than 15%, but to make that point, you could invest in Walmart, made 500% return because it was still so early.
And they could say, why can't they go to 17? Why can't they go to 19? Why can't they go to 23? So for the next 4 decades, they went around the country. So you have to say to yourself, in this stock, I have a 10-year story, a 20-year story. You ought to be able to write that down and follow that. That's what I do with the company. And that's your decision. That's how you sell it. No, you still buy a company, and you buy a company to grow. And if it's a textile company or it's an electronics company or software company, you better understand what they do. And if they do well, the stock will do well, no matter what happens to the market. If the Dow Jones today was 1,000 or 500, you would have made a lot of money in McDonald's. You would have made a lot of money in Johnson & Johnson. You would have made a lot of money in Gillette. These companies' earnings have gone up a lot the last 30 years. And if the market was 50,000, you would have lost money in Burlington Industries. I recommended that in 1969. I think it's gone from 34 to 2 with no stock splits. Because their earnings have been terrible.
Well, your modesty actually makes an important point, which is people with the best batting averages in the world don't bat 1,000. I sometimes get angry mail, particularly during bear markets, saying so-and-so recommended such and such and it went down. Well, how often did you come up with a clinker?
Well, this is a funny business. You don't have to be right even 5 times out of 10. If the times you're right, you make a double and triple. It offsets all those times you lose 20 or 30%. So when you buy a stock, you got to say to yourself, how much can I lose and how much can I make? And you ought to be able to make a lot. Because stocks are risky. I mean, look how much we lost in AT&T. Look how much we lost in Xerox. These were quality companies. You can lose a lot in a stock. So you got to say to yourself, how much can I make? Because I want to buy a stock, if I'm right, I'm going to make a double or triple.
Does your own confidence ever get shaken?
Every day I think the market's going to go up. I keep calling a lot of my companies, so I keep calling the company.
Sounds like an eternal optimist like me. But he does highlight some good points that, while I'm sort of playing this industry from now until the end of the decade, is that too short-sighted? Should I be thinking of this as a 20-year story as well? Obviously, these companies can only get bigger if the trend of legalizing cannabis and ending prohibition obviously evolves around the globe. But more importantly, he says focus on companies that are performing well on the ground, that are setting themselves up for the future. Now, would you say that there's any industry, US-based, American-made, that is setting themselves up more for the future than US cannabis, than any other industry, besides possibly Tesla, the fact that they have a lot of production still in the US? Any other companies, are they mostly producing in the US anymore? I don't think so. And so when you consider that fact, and that while the share prices have taken a horrible dive, obviously we've been through this, the share prices do not equal what the companies are actually doing on the ground. And so while they're doing everything that they can with their hands tied behind their back, keeping sales as steady as possible despite lack of launches from incompetent regulators and all of this, I think MSOs are still doing the best that they can given the circumstances, and that it is still very early and that they're going to shine very bright in time. Just a matter of waiting, as this is still a when not if scenario. But that is it for today's episode, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think of the stories mentioned? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'd be happy to address them. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video and you learned something, please just leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I will catch you on Sunday for This Week in Cannabis News. Have a great week, everybody.